best fighters will meet to compete in the Lost City for a dragon made of solid gold.
Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to go over Jean-Claude Van Damme's martial arts epic The Quest. Now when this movie came out in the 90s and I watched it in the theater, I didn't like it that much, and I kind of compared it to Bloodsport, which is an obvious comparison a lot of people are going to make. It's really like a high budget, high production value Bloodsport that takes place in the 20s. But not comparing it to Bloodsport, looking at it as itself later, now, as I just recently watched it in 2020, I appreciate it a lot more. It's a really grand adventure. It's so epic. They're just not going to make a martial arts movie like this again. At least a major Hollywood studio is not going to make anything like this. But anyway, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to kind of give you my idea, share a bunch of fun facts, but make sure to stay into the end because I'm going to give you my biggest gripe about the film, and trust me, it's nothing anybody would ever guess.
Those are the facts. I guarantee it.
It was a time when the world was still big enough for swashbuckling adventure, pirates on the high seas, gunrunners and tramp steamboats, and ancient mysteries in the exotic Orient. A time when men with big dreams still embarked on impossible quests. Boy, the producers for The Quest are really talking up the 1920s there. Kind of like how George from Seinfeld did.
I should have lived in the 20s and 30s. You know, men wore hats all the time then.
What a bald paradise that must have been. Nobody knew.
I always thought the 1920s sucked, with the lack of technology, prohibition, and poor labor laws. Is it any wonder why Christopher Dubois didn't choose a life of gainful employment, or working for this guy?
Please, grow up, go get yourself some decent clothes, and come work for me.
I don't work for nobody.
One of the reasons why The Quest was set in the 1920s was to give it that grand sense of adventure. That part was actually Sheldon Lettich's suggestion, who thought it'd make things more interesting, because then it becomes very difficult for all those fighters from different parts of the world that journey to the contest. They had to trek across deserts, through jungles, and up into the mountains by train, elephant, and horse in order to reach the Lost City. Van Damme said, to go on this journey today would just be a plain jet ride. Or, if you're this German guy, a Zeppelin. As far as the story goes, petty thief Christopher Dubois finds himself on the run from the police and the mob. While hiding out, he becomes a stowaway on a ship full of gun smugglers, is eventually sold into indentured servitude on an island where he's trained to be a muay warrior. There he finds out about a secret competition where the prize is a dragon made of solid gold. He concocts a plan with Lord Edgar, Dobbs, and Harry Smythe to steal the dragon, but instead of riches, he ends up gaining his honor.
If I win, they'll go free. You'll keep the dragon.
That's a pretty good trade-off, I guess. Sheldon Lettich, who wrote the screenplay for Bloodsport and also wrote and directed Lionheart and Double Impact, actually suggested Van Damme use Frank Dukes to write the script for The Quest. He claimed in an interview with slashfilm.com, which I'll link in the description below, that by this time they already knew Frank Dukes was full of baloney with a lot of the stuff he was saying about his life. As far as I know, Frank Dukes is still going along with his claims and story and will likely take it to his grave.
Even you can't keep that up.
No, I believe he can.
My whole life is a lie.
Let me know in the comments, by the way, if you guys think he'll ever fess up. Sheldon said, Frank had a great imagination. He had good ideas and he knew the martial arts world pretty well. So Sheldon said to Van Damme, as long as you're going to have martial arts, why not get Frank? Frank Dukes ended up suing Jean-Claude Van Damme over the writing credits of The Quest, claiming that Van Damme and he wrote the story under the title The Kumite, Enter the New Dragon, in 1991. He said Van Damme had promised him some big chunk of the profit participation from the movie. Van Damme denied this, claiming that the two projects were unrelated. Dukes won his story credit for The Quest via a ruling of the Writers Guild of America, but lost the actual court case. Van Damme personally went out to recruit Roger Moore, or one of his childhood heroes, to co-star as rapscallion pirate lord Edgar Dobbs. With script in hand, Van Damme traveled to Moore's home in Switzerland, met him at a hotel, and handed him the script. Van Damme must not have had a lot of faith in fax machines at the time. Nevertheless, Van Damme's real-life quest at first did not seem to be a success. Roger Moore recalled, at 10 o'clock the next morning, Van Damme called me up and said I must not have liked it because I hadn't called him back yet. Moore said, I actually hadn't read it yet, but when I did, I thought it was a damn good adventure yarn. Despite his like for the script, Roger Moore would later state that The Quest was his least favorite of his movies. In his autobiography, My Word is My Bond, Sir Roger Moore states that this movie was a disorganized production that was running out of money due to poor preparation. Roger Moore was promised above the title billing by the producers on the posters and the movie, but was shocked when his name was further down on the credits. He had also locked up his knee while being shuttled in a small car to the set, which caused him to spend the majority of the production in a cast, which he blamed the producers for poor management. The overall experience just seemed really sour for him, so that probably has a lot to do with his dislike for the film. Roger Moore credits second unit director Peter McDonald for bringing everything together. When the production was running out of money, many of the crew were asked to work for free to keep filming on schedule. The producers promptly found the money for the filming when said crew laughed at them and threatened to strike. Speaking of Peter McDonald, he was hired on as executive producer. Van Damme first met him while filming Nowhere to Run, where Peter worked as a second unit director. The producers thought the film needed more action, and Peter was brought in to shoot the bike chase. While filming that, Peter and Van Damme got along really well. Van Damme really trusted him and was happy to have him on board to help with the production and directing of The Quest years later. Peter McDonald would later work with Van Damme again in another period piece, 1998's Legionnaire. He also previously worked with Sylvester Stallone, acting as the director for Rambo 3. Jean-Claude Van Damme initially asked Oliver Stone to direct, however, Oliver politely declined. Van Damme first brought up this idea while doing press for Time Cop in 1994. He said, "I started out wanting to be the next Chuck Norris. Now I'm bigger than that. I don't want to be the karate guy anymore. I like these big dramatic movies. I see myself working with Oliver Stone or Alan Parker or Adrian Lynn or Brian De Palma." The Quest was Jean-Claude Van Damme's directorial debut. He would later direct one other film that was shot in 2008 with additional footage shot 4 years later in 2012. However, 8 years later, now 2020, it still has yet to be released. It went by numerous titles throughout the years called The Eagle Path, Soldiers, and even Frenchie. Make sure to check out that video I did on that mystery film. I'll link it in the description below. But as far as The Quest goes, the film had a $30 million budget. The movie came out in 1996, so $30 million in today's dollars would be nearly $50 million now. Can you imagine a major Hollywood studio spending that much money today on a martial arts film? I don't think it'll ever happen. For example, just take a look at the set design. Exteriors were shot in a city built from the ground up in the Thai province of Mae Hong Son, situated on a plateau overlooking 2 existing hill tribe villages. Production designer Steve Spence's Lost City is a melange of Tibetan and Chinese architectural styles that perfectly captures the film's ends of the earth spirit. As far as the interior used for the Gong Gang competition itself, the filmmakers built a studio at a deserted metal smeltering plant in the Phuket province of Thailand. The cavernous fight arena that was erected there provided a perfect, near-mythic setting with gigantic demon statues, throne-like seats for the judges, and hundreds of cheering extras. We really have to marvel at and appreciate the spectacle of it all. It was truly epic. Unfortunately, The Quest only managed to rake in $21.6 million at the domestic box office at the time, making it the third Van Damme film in a row to not make back its budget at the US box office. It did end up grossing another $35.8 million internationally for a total cum of $57.4 million, so despite being labeled as a failure at the time, The Quest was actually a decently successful film. This was the last movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme under his 5-movie contract with Universal Pictures, the first being Hard Target in 1993, Time Cop and Street Fighter in 1994, Sudden Death in 1995, and then of course The Quest in 1996. What a great run with Universal Pictures, by the way. The sad thing is, we could have had more. Van Damme was actually offered a 3-movie deal with Universal that would have paid him $12 million per film, despite the fact that diminishing returns had already begun to set in, at least in terms of his domestic box office pool. However, he got greedy and tried to play the system after Jim Carrey made headlines by becoming the first $20 million man. This negotiation backfired for Van Damme, and he ended up getting blacklisted. I wish Steven Seagal could have talked some sense into him back then.
How much money is enough?
Had that happened, we would have likely got a really good sequel to Time Cop. Also, Universal Pictures purchased the action-adventure script Abominable for producer Moshi Diamant, who worked with Van Damme on Time Cop and The Quest. Van Damme was attached to star in Abominable, which would have pitted him against the Abominable Snowman. The film would have been like Predator in the snow, and we'd see Van Damme as part of a United Nations task force sent in to investigate the mysterious disappearance of Red Cross workers in the Himalayas. It was supposedly going to have an $80 million budget and be directed by Rennie Harlan. Rennie Harlan, by the way, directed Sylvester Stallone in Cliffhanger. I can only imagine how awesome Abominable would have been. I could have been doing a video about that right now. But back to The Quest. As far as the fights go, the Gong Gang competition was not just the climax of the story, but also a tribute to the world of martial arts and Van Damme's personal homage to the discipline he owes for his Hollywood success. He states that for 3 years he traveled around the world on the quest to find the best fighters. Van Damme, along with producer Moshi Diamant, looked at 1,000 audition tapes. For detailed background on each of the 16 fighters within the tournament, please check out the videos I did about that. Who were the fighters in the Quest, Part 1 and 2. I'll link those in the description below. Now, each fighter would choreograph their own fight scene, and then Van Damme would come in once they had finished and taper it off. Not change it entirely, but merely give it a polish. There were so many styles of fighting that each was left to their own devices. Van Damme was very smart as to what would work for the camera and his knowledge of cinematography. I found several of the fights to be rather short. For example, I thought it was a waste for Azdi Nori, the guy who played the fighter from Turkey, to rush that Koji Katao, the guy who played the sumo wrestler from Japan. I don't doubt there's quite a lot of footage within several of the fights that ended up on the cutting room floor. The film only runs about an hour and 34 minutes, with the first fight not even starting until roughly 54 minutes in. I'd say the biggest issue I have with the fights in the film was the heavy use of the slow motion. In general, I like the slow motion effect, and it's certainly commonly used to great effect in several Van Damme films. However, in the quest it appears blurry and the movement somewhat jerky, which leads me to believe they didn't film these fight scenes properly with a higher camera frame rate. Instead, the effect was just added later in post-production. Take a look at this scene from Bloodsport for instance. This is how a proper slow motion effect should look.
Final event! Mongolia against United States!
The final fight kind of reminded me of Rocky V.
You knocked him down. Why don't you try knocking me down now?
No, in the ring, in the ring. Tommy Gunn only fights in the ring. Come on, let's get out of here.
My ring's outside.
Come on.
I like that it took place outside and you had the crowd surrounding the fighters, and I like their involvement in the fight.
Chris, you got him. Now get in there and finish him. Go, go, go!
Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, here's my biggest gripe with the film. Unlike so many of the films featuring fighters, it doesn't leave you on a high note, excited, motivated, and pumped up like Rocky, The Karate Kid, Bloodsport, and Kickboxer do. Let me explain. It's really the narrative structure of the film. It opens when Van Damme's an old man and he's telling his story, and that's pretty much how it ends as he wraps up the story, which I guess they thought would be a good idea since it's a period piece taking place in the 1920s. But it's kind of sad seeing him old. It's like his whole life story and life is over. We're much more used to seeing our hero walk off into the sunset, and it's nice to imagine how his life is going to be afterwards. Ideally, a lot of life left to be lived afterwards. The quest more kind of reminds you of your own mortality. I much prefer how the Karate Kid ended, for example. He's got the respect of the bullies, he's got the girl, the trophy, his whole life's ahead of him, and boom, we leave on that high note. Oh, by the way, the opening of the Karate Kid Part 2, where Kreese and Johnny are in the parking lot and Mr. Miyagi intervenes, is actually how the Karate Kid was supposed to end, but that scene really just killed all the energy off after Daniel won the Old Valley Karate Tournament. So I'm glad they decided just to end the first Karate Kid there on that high note.
Hey! Mr. Miyagi! We did it! We did it! All right! Woo!
Now going back to the quest, Van Damme's character, Christopher Dubois, is introduced as an old man with a cane. It reminds me of what Michael J. White has said in reference to why he trains so much. Cane Day. Michael says, "Aging is inevitable. I know one day I will have to walk with a cane, and on that day I will wish I had the choice to run. I thank God I can run now, so I will run, sprint, lift, jump, and kick in celebration until I can't anymore. The more I work out now, the longer I delay Cane Day." It's really that whole use it or lose it concept right there. He goes on and says, "Nothing is worse than living in regret, and I believe we can all and should improve our quality of life right now. Your life and your body are your only true possessions. They can't be repossessed or foreclosed on. It's time to build equity in your most prized possession, you. You just have to love yourself enough to believe you're worth it, and believe me, you are." It really amazes me that there are people out there that take better care of their car than their own body. A car can always be replaced. Your health and your body, that's a vessel, that's your vehicle, and the only one you're ever going to experience the world in. And I'm not just talking about the physical body, the mental and spiritual health, that's very important too. And if you think about it, it's kind of sad what we're constantly exposed to, especially from like the mainstream media, just all these negative stories, all this negative news, really kind of beats you down and wears down the soul. So I try to avoid a lot of that, and I just notice I'm a lot more happier mentally, spiritually, and I have faith in humanity. It's really easy to lose it sometimes. Anyway, as far as the quest goes, overall I think the film got better with age. I appreciate the spectacle and adventure aspect more so than the fighting, as I don't think it can compete with Bloodsport in that arena, even though the guys cast to play the fighters in the film are more accomplished than what we got in Bloodsport. I wouldn't place the quest among Van Damme's top films, but it's not in the list of among his worst either. I feel it deserves a spot right in the middle. Let me know what you guys think about the quest in the comments below.
It's over. Hit the gong!